Hey, Prof G here with another YouTube video. Thanks to users Talib23401 and Red Dog for the great new name. Still go as Jeff Gibbons, but Prof G, I am a professor part-time, so kind of works. So, in this video, I am going to be going over Sonokinetic's libraries. They're on sale right now. I'll put a link in the description. I've never owned these libraries before, so I'm not going to give you a technical walkthrough. My new friend Ruben has done an amazing job on YouTube making all sorts of tutorials on every single one of their libraries. So make sure you go check out those videos. When you get the software, you are going to want to watch those videos, because there is so much to this software. It's not a question of just loading up a patch and then just going meh, 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 and playing all of these different phrases. And it's very complex. There's lots of ways you can tailor it to suit your project. I'm a composer, and of course I like to compose everything myself, come up with it originally, but I definitely am not afraid to use loops and phrases and things like that if they're going to help me. Sometimes I use them as a starting point, and I feel like these libraries would be great for that kind of thing. So let's get right into it. I've got 4 libraries installed. I've got Indy, Grosso, Espressivo, and Largo. So here is Indy. Let me just play you a quick example that I messed around with. All right, so there is my first little idea with Indy. And this one intrigued me the most out of the 4 libraries that I picked up. It has some really, really beautiful sounds in it. So I'll show you this first track. This one is a strings track. Double click on it, you'll see what I've got in there. And then a little while later, down in the bottom, you can see I'm triggering chords. And then up on the top is where I choose the phrase I want with the chord in my left hand. So there's a minor phrase, make it major. So we have 12 different phrases that you can load up, and then you just play them by playing a chord in the left hand and then triggering the phrase in the right hand. And you can have multiple phrases playing at the same time. Now let's make it minor. And so each of these keys here is triggering a different phrase in the interface up here. And if I want to choose a different phrase, all I have to do is click on the current phrase and then go over to this kind of browser that shows you the different phrases that you can choose from. So on the left-hand side, we can see that Indy is all about string quartet, a string ensemble, woodwinds ensemble, brass ensemble, and then melodic percussion. So right now you can see all of my phrases that I have loaded, all 12 of them, are just this light green color, which is the string ensemble. And that's the way I've chosen to arrange this little project, and you can do it however you want. Click on the phrase and then go over to, brass ensemble and load a phrase right there. So you choose your phrase, you click this button, and then you go through and you click on the categories to hear other phrases. So I can hear string quartet, and we have all of these different phrases grouped by some kind of suggestive title. So we've got life phrases. And you can click this little play button to hear them. So some really beautiful phrases played by real string sections and brass sections and stuff like that. And the thing you're going to find with these libraries is that They're not all arranged the same way. Some of them have different controls, and that's where you're going to want to watch those videos to see how to access some of the similar functionality between the different libraries. That's something that's really important. You're also going to notice that, how were they supposed to organize these phrases, right? They couldn't really give them titles based on composers or anything like that. So there's different ways that they've organized the phrases in each of these libraries. And they also use these kind of hieroglyphics to show you the phrase. And of course, if you look at this kind of neat painting, you can get some idea of what the phrase is going to be. Hit the play button, it's going to be something that's ascending and descending, I'm sure. And here, descending. And something tells me if I were to play with this library a lot for a long time, I'd eventually know, okay, I'm going to go to the outside category and find a little phrase here for this scene that I'm working on or something like that. And then each of them have similar controls right here. So you can see I've got some modulation information here, and that's because I had chosen this one phrase that's triggered by C3, which is this C, to respond to modulation information. But I've chosen other phrases that don't respond to modulation information. So by this one little symbol right here, now this is the only one of those phrases when they're triggered at the same time that's going to respond to modulation information. And then you've got things like you can make the phrase go twice as fast or half as fast or whatever. And this is probably one of my favorite features. If you click this button right here, you get the MIDI for that phrase. So we can see the phrase right there. There's the major version and there's the minor version. If we decide we want to do something with this, I can click this little button, drag this into my project, and then now I've got this MIDI file which I can then apply to any other virtual instrument. So there is the phrase right there. Let's go listen to it again. So the coolest part about having this MIDI information is you can go in, get inspired by a little chunk of something. So you could just start a project with one phrase. Like listen to this piano thing right here. So beautiful piano phrase. And if you're not a piano player, start with that phrase, drag that into your project, and then now you can assign that to a MIDI virtual instrument of your choice and start changing all the notes up, make an entire piece out of this little starting point. So let's listen to some of these patches. Some of the brass and the wood ones are exciting for me because I so often just go to strings, when I'm writing something orchestral or writing something for a soundtrack. Love that. Before I go to another library, I should just mention working on it in your DAW, because it's fun to just play the different phrases, but sometimes it gets tricky to get the timing lined up exactly. So I did find myself having to play around with the libraries a little bit, just where the notes fall. Do they come right before the bar, or are they quantized on the bar? So just be aware of that. You're going to have to play around with that a little bit to get things to time perfectly. And then you're also going to want to play with this crossfade control, because that controls how quickly does this current phrase stop when the next one starts. And that took some actual playing with on the different libraries and the different little ideas that I've come up with here. Okay, so here is my little Largo idea. Largo is meant to be all slow and stately, passages by orchestral instruments. And if we look at the types we've got in Largo, we've got brass, strings, and woodwinds. It's got a very similar interface to a bunch of the other Sonokinetic libraries. So you'll see these 3 different phrases right here that you can load on each key switch. So I can trigger each one, play the chord in the left hand, go to the next phrase, the way I've arranged this one is I actually used a different patch for each one. You can see the different phrases. I click on the phrase right here, and then I can go listen to them just like the other one. And then we can press the mute right here, or the mute key down at the bottom to trigger these different phrases when I hold down the note and play a chord. And we're hearing both of these. I can turn this one off and that one on. And if you see a little button option below some of these phrases in these libraries, that means there's another version of that phrase you can load up. That sounds very similar. I couldn't find a way to remotely trigger these different phrases other than with using automation in my DAW. So if somebody knows of a key command or something like that to choose between those different phrases on one particular slot, let me know in the comments. And I have a ton still to learn about these libraries, that's for sure. Here is the hieroglyphic for the MIDI for this one, and then I can drag and drop it over here. You would have a really hard time getting passages to sound that good with virtual instruments because they were recorded with real instruments, and that's probably the strongest point of all of Sonokinetic stuff, is just having these real performers and just how beautiful that sounds. And there is times I notice where things are a little bit pitchy, but that's something that as virtual composers we've been able to just go, yeah, let's just fix every single note. That's something that you get with real players, right? And it adds another level of realism to these libraries. Okay, so the next library we'll look at is Grosso. So we've got brass, choir, percussion, strings, and woodwinds, as well as a little transition thing. This library was made to be at a different sort of time signature, so it's going to have a triplet sort of feel to it. So you can still use it in 4/4 projects. This one is in a 4/4 project, and you'll feel the rhythm is different than regular 4/4. Let's have a listen. Play this with the click track, you'll hear how it goes against 4. It's got a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 sort of triplet feel. Really beautiful stuff. I think this would go nicely with some of the other libraries that aren't in this time signature, or else you're going to be stuck in that kind of time signature. So I'm sure there are other libraries that we could check out that would have similar, arrangements and would work perfectly with this library. So I'll go to my percussion track. I've got some taikos, toms. Sounds great. We've got the strings. Let's have a look at that one. So some seriously intense stuff with the strings, and again, you're not going to get a sound like this out of a virtual instrument library because there's something organic about it. But now, how do you get that to work together with the phrases? And the first time you open it up, you just want it to sound like that, and you're going to have a hard time getting phrases that match up. And then it's going to be also, digging through the phrases and finding the phrases that work with each other. That's what makes these libraries a challenge. And I think it's something that you just have to be prepared for when you buy these libraries. But once you get over that, learn how to work with the interface, start digging into the phrases, that's where you're going to, be able to start really creating your own stuff. And then with, say, the brass. Okay, so the last library is Espressivo, and this one is meant to be a lot more abstract than the other ones. So you're going to find all of these really bizarre phrases in this one, and I think they're going after sort of a Bernard Herrmann style of composition, Penderecki, and all of these composers that did really strange things with the instruments. One of them would use pens on the violins and the strings to get a certain sound, and others would pluck the strings and do things like that. And you'll recognize Bernard Herrmann if you've watched Twilight Zone or many of the Alfred Hitchcock movies. So let's have a listen to some of these. Very psycho. I love that. So that's Espressivo. Make sure you go check out the amazing tutorials on this one as well. It's got some different ways of working with it compared to the other libraries. So you see all of the phrases loaded up on the keyboard as opposed to triggering chords and stuff like that. So a totally different way of working with this library compared to the other ones. But once you get your brain around some of these controls, you'll be able to make sense of what you're looking at. My first time working with anything from Sonokinetic, and I'm definitely excited about working with it. Even as a composer, I am excited about the sounds. I'm excited about getting inspiration from other ideas, dragging MIDI over, making it my own thing, using some of these phrases in ways that I might not come up with something on my own. So I hope that gives you an idea of what these libraries are like, what you can expect the first time you open them up, even after watching the tutorials, and helps you make a decision on whether these libraries are right for you. So check the links at the bottom and hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.